Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to cover methods. Okay, so we had properties are like variables. Okay, now let's talk about methods are like functions. In fact, they are functions, not like methods are functions. Okay, so let's create our very first method. So what I would like to do is I would like to print out some kind of a printable title that would say something like Harry Potter and the Magicians by Ryan Dingle or something like that. Okay, so let's create a function that would do that. Just concat these two properties. Okay, so let's name it. Let's create a function, and we always need to add either private, public, or protected. Okay, so we're not worried about that. We just use public now. So public function, and I'm going to name this function get printable title. Okay, now what we're going to do is we create a variable result which will hold the result. Okay, so result, what I would like to return using this function is the title by the author. Okay, how do I point within this class? I'm within this class and I would like to access this property. So how do I do that? I do that using this variable. Okay, so this represents the object itself. Okay, so this object itself, so we can access the properties, these ones, or the methods, the one I'm actually creating now. So all these properties and methods are accessible to this variable. Okay, so what I would like to do is I would like to get the title. So simply I use this and then title, and then I'm going to concatenate. Okay, and then add this dash in the middle, and then again concatenate, and then write the author name. So this title, in fact not dash, let's say by, this title by this author. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward, but just knowing this helps understand it better. Okay, so this has the access to the properties and methods of the class itself. Okay, this function, what it will do is it will return the result, simple as that. Okay, but let's add a simple logic as well. What if the books are not available, right? So let's add a simple logic here. If this available, okay, so this available, let's say not available, using this operator. Okay, so if not available, what we would like to do is we would like to say set this result variable equal to the string not or not available. If not available, then what we would do is we just concatenate. Okay, so if not available, we will get to see the title by author is not available. Okay, and finally we need to return as well. Okay, return the results. Okay, so function, otherwise it has no meaning. If there is no return, function will do nothing. Okay, simple as that. Let's create another topic, another method as well, one more. Okay, so this one, let's name it get copy. Okay, another method. Okay, so public function get copy. Okay, so here also we check if it is available, we decrement by 1. Okay, so if this available is smaller than 1, that means we have nothing left. Okay, so in that case what we want to do is we want to return false. Okay, otherwise what we want to do is we want to decrement the availability by 1. Okay, so this available minus minus. Okay, and finally return true. Okay, so we have two methods. First method will print out and then print out the printable title, and then this method will check. So if it is available, if available count is less than 1, then it will return false. Otherwise, it will decrement the availability. So if we have 10, it will make it 9, and then it will return true. Awesome. Okay, so why don't we test these methods out? In fact, what happened here? Okay, return false. So what we can do, so let's say if Harry Potter, and then we say get copy. Okay, so if it is available, we will echo out, here is your copy of, and let's concatenate the title, Harry Potter title. Okay, and then let's add a line break. Okay, if not, if copy is not available, then we will echo out, sorry, it's gone. Okay, so let's see what we get here on the screen. Refresh, and as you can see, here is your copy of Harry Potter and the Magicians. Awesome. Now let's say we had the availability we set to 10. Let's say we have 0. Let's see what we get here. Save it, come here, refresh, sorry, it's gone. Okay, so these methods we created. So this is how we work. It's pretty straightforward. We create a class, we add the properties, we add the methods, and then we instantiate. So this is your introduction to classes, properties, and methods. Okay, now this is not the best way of instantiating. Okay, so imagine if you had to instantiate 100 different books, and for you would be writing 100 times like this, so that would be terrible, right? So there is a better solution, and that is constructor. Okay, so one of the magic methods, and that is what we're going to cover in the next video. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now let's begin writing code to learn object-oriented programming, and we begin with classes. Okay, so first of all, we need to set up a folder, right? So this is where this is my folder directory. I'm using valid, but you could be using mam or vagrant or anything. All right, so let's go there and then create a folder. Let's, what do we call it? I've got a lot of folders here. Let me name it test, right? Test. Okay, so let me drag this to Sublime Text Editor. Okay, so inside this test folder, let me create my first file, and I'm going to name it, what do I name it? Name it book.php. Okay, all right, so PHP. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a class. Okay, and it is very simple. Class keyword, and then give it a name. What name you want to give to your class? Let's name it book. And by convention, it is recommended that each file has only one class, and class name begins with a capital letter, and then class name is as same as the file name. Okay, that is the convention. All right, so class book, that's it. That's how you create a class. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, so but it's pretty useless. What do we do? It has nothing, right? So talking about classes, class is the definition of what an object looks like and what it can do. Okay, so it is the definition. So within these two curly braces, you define the class with, how do you define the class? You define with properties and methods. Okay, so you might be wondering, what is properties and methods? Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Properties means the variables, okay, or variable inside the class. We call them properties. Okay, properties. So let's create our very first property. we will have some kind of bookstore. So bookstore, so the books, what they have normally, they have title, author, and so on, right? So let's begin with title. So normally we would write a variable like this, title, right? Title equals to something, but we're not going to give any value to this variable yet. We just declare the variable without any value, okay? But in object-oriented programming, before also I was showing you, we have three types of visibility: public, private, and protected, okay? So we begin with public, and I will come to this one in future lesson, okay? So don't stress about this one. Just know that you just use public because the code inside this class would be accessible to the other classes or the code outside of this class, okay? So they can get the values, set the values, all that stuff. So that's why we use this keyword public. So public means this code can be accessed from outside of this class, okay? So just understand that much, and we come back to the visibility later. Okay, so talking about book, so book will have the property of title, book will have the property of ISBN number, right? Let's do that, ISBN. Let's create another property, and let's name it author, and finally one more, and let's name it available. So we are working in a scenario where we have a bookstore and we're going to do all that stuff, okay? So we created our class, we added the properties. There's not much here. How do we use it, okay? You thinking so? Then no worries, let's use it. So what we can do is we can instantiate this class, okay? So when we say instantiate, it simply means use it, okay? So you can create a class like this, and then you can use, or in other words, instantiate. It means the same thing. So we can instantiate it as many times as we need. So we might have 100 books, so we don't need to create 100 book object, okay? We have this one object class, and then we can just reuse it. That's the whole point, okay? So when the same class is instantiated or used many times, their properties and methods, which we come back, we have to cover yet, okay? So they will produce different result based on the instance, okay? It will not always be the same, otherwise it would be pointless, okay? So let's write it down so it makes perfect sense, okay? So let's create book, even let's call it, what do we let's give it a name, Harry Potter, okay? So book Harry Potter, and we create a new instance using this new keyword. So Harry Potter, new book, and we instantiate a new book using this new keyword, okay? Simple as that. So let me copy this. So Harry Potter, we instantiate this class. Now we can use all these properties to assign a value to them, okay? So let's say title, and we can set the title. In fact, let's begin with ISBN. So ISBN, let's keep some random number. All right, now let's paste again, and let's set the title to Harry Potter and the Magicians. I don't even know. I don't know anything about Harry Potter. Okay, so that's the title. Again, paste, and let's set the author. Who is the author? Ryan D. Okay, my name. All right, and then availability. So how many we have? Let's give it some number. Let's say 10. Okay, available set to 10. Okay, so this is how we create a class, and we use that, we instantiate. Now you could have another book, you could have 100 other books, you could instantiate in a similar way. So having one object is enough. We can just instantiate many times, okay? Now let's have a look using var down. Okay, let me paste this one, Harry Potter. So let's have a look if all these properties we added are actually available. Okay, let's see. So let me open this in the browser. I named it test. Okay, so test, that's test, and then book.php. All right, so as you can see, we have the book object, and we have the ISBN number, we have the title and the magicians, we have the author name, and we have the availability to 10. Okay, so this is how you create a class and instantiate. Okay, now we could instantiate to some other book many times. You already got it, right? So this is classes and properties. Okay, in the next video we're going to cover methods. Okay, what are methods and how we can play around with our data. Okay, so that's coming next. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video, let's talk about magic methods. Okay, so there are a couple of magic methods such as constructors, toString, get, set, and so on. Okay, so why don't we actually go to PHP official documentation. So PHP magic methods. Okay, so as you can see, these are the magic methods available in PHP: construct, destruct, call, get, set. There are quite a lot of them. So, and the toString and so on. So we're going to cover a few of them, such as construct. It is one of the most popular one, and you should know how to use construct. In fact, we're going to use that right away. Okay, so let's go do that. So how we instantiating here is we're writing multiple lines of code to instantiate, right? So instead, what we can do is we can use constructors. Okay, so what is constructor? Is constructors are obviously, you know, the magic methods, but how do they work? Okay, so the way they work is they are first of all, they are predefined class methods that PHP engine executes under some events, okay, such as instantiating. So instantiating an object. So when you do something like that, it automatically runs. This constructor function will automatically run by PHP. Okay, so PHP will execute these class methods such as constructor. Okay, so let's give it a try. How do we begin? We begin by creating a construct function. Okay, so right after the properties, let's create. So we start by saying public function, and all these magic methods, they begin with double underscore. Okay, so this is double underscore, and then you write construct. Okay, so this is the function. Now this function will take the arguments. Okay, so what arguments you want to pass? You want to pass all these arguments, like, because the ISBN, title, author, and available, they are the ones being used to instantiate, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying not to write all these lines of code. We want to use one of these magic methods so that it's easier. So all these ISBN, title, author, we are writing it manually. Instead, we pass as an argument. Okay, so let's begin. ISBN, another argument is title, another argument is author, and then the final argument available. All right, so this constructor takes 4 arguments, and this will set using this. I guess this title equals to, sorry, let's begin by ISBN equals to ISBN. Okay, okay, so let me copy this instead of make it easier. So for title, author, and available. Okay, so this title equals to title, this author equals to author, and then this available equals to available. Okay, so we already know that this has access to the properties and methods. So this means the object itself. So when it says this ISBN, means it is setting the property we have. It has no value, but this constructor will take all these values as arguments and set. Okay, so that way we can instantiate many times, and the many different instance with many different title and author will all have their own result. Okay, so that's how it works. So public function construct, take all these arguments and set. It will set like so. Okay, so that's awesome. Now what happens is this constructor function, it doesn't have a return statement. As you can see, it's not like regular function. That's why it is one of the magic methods. Okay, it runs behind the scene by PHP as soon as some events such as instantiation happens. Okay, so what we can do is, now that we have a constructor, what we can do is, instead of doing all this, we can get rid of them. In fact, let me write it down before I get rid of it. Okay, so what we can do is I can pass all these arguments straight to this function. Okay, straight to this constructor. Okay, so we instantiate a new book, and since we have this constructor method here, and this method runs automatically when we instantiate. Okay, so what we can do is we can pass these as arguments. So we can pass the first argument ISBN. Let's copy and paste here, comma, and then this is the title. Make sure you copy with the quotes. Okay, so that's done. And then the author name, comma, that's done. And then available. Okay, so available, let's set it to 10. All right, set it to 10, and now we can all get rid of all this. Awesome. Now how easy it is to instantiate a new object using constructor, as you can see, right? Awesome. So does this work like before? Let's give it a try. Come here, refresh, and as you can see, it's working fine. See, here's a copy of Harry Potter and all that. Awesome. So this is how you use constructor. You want certain things to happen. As soon as you instantiate, then you use constructor. Okay, so you will see such examples being used in Laravel framework. Okay, so anytime you will see the construct function, you will not be afraid of it, right? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so we learned how to use constructor. Now let's cover one more magic method, that is toString, just to get you and give you some idea about magic methods. Okay, so let's do that in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video, let's cover one more magic method, that is toString. Okay, so they are called magic method for a reason, because whenever you instantiate a class, they run automatically behind the scene. Okay, so let's try this one as well. So let me create this function, public function and double underscore toString. Okay, this magic method. So what I want to do is I want to just print out the same thing. In fact, why don't I copy this one? It's going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be similar. So let me copy this because I just want to show you how these functions work. Okay, so let me change this name to toString. Let's try this method, toString. How does it work? It should return the title by author automatically, right? So we have instantiated this class, okay, and then instead of vardom, let's do echo. Okay, echo. So what we're doing is we're echoing the new instance of object. We're not saying that Harry Potter title or anything like that. We're just echoing the object itself. But because these magic methods run behind the scene, So as soon as it is instantiated, their result we can see. So if I echo the new instance itself and go to the browser and refresh, as you can see, Harry Potter and the Magician's Variant. So that is the outcome of this function, toString. Otherwise, if you don't believe me, because this also has the same method, it is returning the same result. But if I comment this out, okay, and then let me refresh, as you can see, object of class book could not convert it to string, as you can see. But because we use this magic method toString, that worked awesome. Okay, so these are magic methods, they're pretty magical. Okay, so the one you would use most is a construct. We use that. In this lesson, let me cover a few more topics. Okay, for example, we have this all these arguments. What if I don't supply the one of those arguments? For example, available. Okay, so as when I instantiate it, I pass the value of 10. Okay? What if I don't supply any value? What happens? Let's save this one. In fact, let's comma save and refresh. Okay, you get this error saying on-caught argument count error, too few arguments to function block. Okay, so that happens. Now we can prevent that using default arguments. Okay, so these things, arguments and type hinting, these topics also we're going to cover in this lesson. Okay, so default arguments, like you saw, if we forget to pass these arguments, we get the error. Now the solution is making the passing the default argument. For example, available, if nothing is passed, I can set to 0. Okay, so this is called default arguments. Okay, so this becomes super useful in time. Okay, so if you don't get any input from there, from the user or whatever, then you can use the default argument. But if it is supplied from there, that will take the precedence, and then this will be overshadowed by the one supplied. Okay, so if I set it to 0 and refresh, as you can see, we didn't get the error and we get not available because it's set to 0. Now if I set to 0, but still if I supply set 10, this will be used and not the default one. Okay, so it's first, as you can see, not available is gone. Okay, so that's one default argument is done. Another is type hinting, and this is super awesome. Okay, so when you get all these arguments, you can type hint by saying what sort of argument you want. For example, ISBN, you always want it to be integer, numbers, right? You don't want it to be string, because ISBN will always be integer. So what you can do is you can type hint saying int. Okay, so same with the title, you know it's going to be string, it has to be string, right? So you can type hint string. Author will be string. Available will be int. Okay, I just need to put here int. Okay, awesome. Now let me refresh. It works fine. Nothing has happened. But what if, because I have said it should be integer, but now let's say if I try to give string, for example, okay, let's say if I try to give string to ISBN, let's see what we get here. As you can see, on-caught type error, argument 1 passed to book must be the type of integer string given. As you can see, type hint helps a lot, especially for debugging. All right, so let me put it the way it was. Okay, so that is another thing. Type hinting is super useful. Now it's not just the string and integer type, we can type hint the class itself, and that is extremely powerful. So those topics will be covered in the future lessons. All right, so I'll see you in the very next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to cover the visibility types. Okay, so the private, protected, and public. All right, so let me make one more class here. So let me make it, let's call it customer. So bookstore would have books and customers, right? So let's create customer.php. Okay. Okay, so I have added some comments here just to make sure that you get it 100%. Okay, so we have three types of visibility. So private is the most strict one, top level, and then there is a protected, and then there is public. All right, so let's go through all of them. So the private visibility means that the properties and methods of the class cannot be accessed by outside. Okay, so just like the name suggests, it's private to that class itself. Okay, it's not, this code is not accessible to the outside. Okay, so that's private, pretty straightforward. Now protected, what is protected? The protected visibility means that the properties and methods of the class can be accessed only by its children class. Okay, so we're going to see that in action in the future lessons. Okay, so what happens is one class can be extended by another class. So in that situation, it is called parent and child class. Okay, so even it's called class and subclass as well. So parent and child makes it a bit more understandable, I think. So protected means you have one class, for example, you have a customer, and then maybe we will have later down the road two types of customer. One will be a basic customer, another will be a premium type of customer. So both of them will inherit a certain properties and methods of the customer. For example, customer name, address, and so on, things like that. Maybe those properties methods would be usable in both basic and premium classes, right? So in that situation, what would happen is those basic or premium class would extend the parent class. Okay, so when something like that happens, in that situation, even if you declared the properties and methods as protected, they will be accessible to the children classes, the one that extends. So you will see this in action. Okay, so it's pretty it shouldn't be too complicated to understand. It's a private is private for the class itself, it's not going out anywhere. Protected is not totally like public. Now let's go to the public. Actually, public visibility means that the properties and methods to the class can be accessed by outside. So okay, so that's public just by the name it suggests. Public, it is accessible. Private, it is completely to the class. However, protected is kind of sits in the middle. It is not public, it is not fully private, it is protected. Means any other class, if they extend to the parent class, then those class will have access. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Now lots of theory. So let me comment this, take this away. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's create a customer class. Begin by the class keyword customer. Within these curly braces, we define the properties and methods. Okay, so this time we're going to have, before we had all these public properties, now this time we're going to try private. Okay, because customer details such as ID and name, probably it makes more sense to make it private than public, right? So private ID, okay, private, what else they will have, first name, okay, private surname, and then let's have email as well. Okay, so we have these four properties, private. Now let's have one function as well. Public, let's make it public. Public function this is going to be a constructor so that we can instance it easily, right? Construct, and it will take the ID, it will take the first name, it will take the surname and the email. Okay, and then just like we did earlier, this set ID equals to ID. Again, now let's do the same for first name. First name, let's make it first name, surname, whatever comes from the argument we set. Okay, email, awesome. So now we have another class, it has private properties. Now let's give it a try. Why don't we try it now? Instead of trying it inside the class, which we shouldn't do anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this out. Okay, this is how we instance it. Copy this one, and let's leave the class as it nice and clean. Save, customer, nice and clean, save. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new file, init.php. Okay, and we're going to do all the instantiation from there. Okay, so it's always a good idea to keep the classes clean. Okay, so let's make it init.php, and let me save this one. Awesome. So this is our directory. Okay, pretty clean. Okay, so init.php, let me paste that bit I copied from there. Make sure you type php. Alright. Okay, so how does it work? Because we need to require those files here, right? This init doesn't know. It cannot instance it like so. If you go to init php, class book not found and all that stuff. So let's do that. Let's bring, so what we can do is we can require. Okay, so let's require classes. So require once, okay, and then we give the directory, okay, and then we concatenate. So it's from the same directory, and we concatenate and give the class name. So directory slash book.php. All right, it's in the same directory and it's a book.php. Now we can do the same for customer. Awesome. Okay, so we require these two classes. Now we have instantiated a book. Now why don't we instantiate a customer as well? Okay, so let's name it first customer equals to new customer. Okay, now we can pass in the arguments. Okay, so the customer takes the ID, let's set it to 1. Customer takes the first name, Ryan, okay, and then the surname, give it surname, and then email, right? Okay, make sure it is a string. Okay, great. So we have the first customer, we have instantiated the book, we have instantiated the customer. Now because the customer's properties are set to private, books are not. So let's give it a try. Why don't we do, let's use var dump back. Okay, var dump Harry Potter, var dump first customer. In fact, let me comment this out, it's going to be a mess. Okay, let's save this one, Harry Potter. We can see undefined variable surname. On customer line 12. It's the spelling. Okay, let's save this one. Let's try it. Yeah, okay, we get the book object, there's the title, all that stuff. Great. Now let's have a look at the customer. Save this one. Okay, so we got the customer object, the integer 1, first name Ryan, surname Dingle, and email, all that stuff. Okay, it's working fine. But what if we try to access, let's say, our first name? We know the first name is set to private, so let's see if we can access it. Refresh. On-cut error, cannot access private property, customer first name. You see, that is how it works. Okay, so let me comment this out, go back to this one, Pardon Harry Potter, and Harry Potter, what does it have? With this book, let's try to get its title, because it's set to public, which should be fine. Okay, so let's give it a try. Harry Potter and the Magician. So you see the difference? When you set it to public, it can be easily accessible by the code outside, but if it is set to private, you cannot do that. Okay, so that is a very basic example of understanding private and public. Okay, so this is all for public and private, and protected we're going to cover in the coming lessons. When the time comes, when the time is appropriate, that time I will introduce you to the protected type as well. Okay, so I'll see you in the very next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to learn about encapsulation, accessors, and mutators. Okay, so all these terms are used in frameworks like Laravel as well. So this knowledge you learn here will be super useful when you learn Laravel. Okay, so talking about encapsulation, what is it? Okay, so private visibility is great to maintain the internal structure of your classes, right? As a developer, you can change the internal structure without affecting the external code. And what I mean by this is I'll show you in the example. Okay, so don't worry. So for example, other classes that extends it, I was talking about it earlier too, which we haven't covered yet. A child class can extend parent class. Okay, so that's coming later. So how do we read or change these private properties or methods from outside or from other classes? Okay, so that's the main point. So encapsulation, and that's what we're trying to understand here. Encapsulate. For example, this method we created earlier, it has private set, all these properties set to private. However, we need to access these methods from outside. Otherwise, it doesn't make much sense. In most cases, we need, but we don't want them to give direct access. We give them access, but not direct access. Okay. So they can just say first name, they can do that. But what we can do is we can set accessors or mutators. Okay, these are simply methods. Okay, it's like getters and setters. Okay, we can do so using getters and setters. These methods are also known as accessors and mutators. Okay, so let's see them in action. At the moment, the customer, we had the error, right? When you try to get the first name, we got the error. But let's say our application needs this functionality, we need that, and we also want to maintain the internal structure as private. We don't want to change that. We don't want to change that to public. So what's the solution? So that is what encapsulation is all about. Okay, so we're going to set these accessors and mutators. Okay, so let's begin by this solution. We need the first name. So how do we do that? So let's go to customer.php, and we're going to create some method, some accessor getter method. Okay, so right after this construct, let's create a function, accessor function. Okay, so function, let's make it public function, and we name it get first name. Okay, because we want to get the name. right? So this function, what it will do is it will return, you guessed it, this first name. See that it is private, however we have this public function, and this one will return the first name. Now this has access to the properties and methods, so it works. So see that we can still maintain our internal structure. We don't change it. Sometimes we might need this and that other things, which you will see in the very next exercise. So let's not talk about that. Let's just do that. Get first name, return the first name. Okay, we can do the same with the surname as well. Okay? Get surname, this surname. Okay. Now let's give it a try. Let me comment this out. Var dump first customer first name. Before we had error. Now let's see. Now in fact, get first name. This should be get first name. Okay. Refresh. Right. Awesome. So now it works. Even though the first name is set to private. However, because of this access method, we can access. That's awesome. So this is encapsulation. Okay, you encapsulate the code. You maintain the internal structure and you provide these accessors and mutators. The whole point is, what if let's say we decided that we want this full name method. Okay, let's say we want to have a full name functionality. Instead of first name and last name, we want to have full name. Now just for that, instead of changing the internal structure, what you can do is you can simply create another accessor method and provide, just concat the first name and last name. We already have it. Let's not modify the internal structure, but all they want is the full name, so I can create another method. So that is the whole point. It helps developer to maintain the internal structure. Now every time you need this, you need that, and in that case, going and directly modifying the class properties methods, that becomes a mess and it's hard to maintain over time. So as you can see, it's a broad concept. So if they want full name, instead of creating another property called full name here and just modifying the internal structure, what we do is we just create another accessor function. Okay, so that's the whole point. Public function get full name, and we simply return. So what we can do is we can say this first name, and then we can concatenate, make space, concatenate this surname. Awesome. Beautiful. Now get full name. Let's try. We don't want first name, we want full name. Let's see. Awesome. Right? Now you can do so much more in real life. For example, let's say we want all these letters to be uppercase. Let's wrap them in str to upper. Okay, so you can apply a lot of logic, do all sorts of things, but internal structure stays the same. So it's better approach, as you can see. So this is the benefit. This is how we apply encapsulation. Okay. Now we can do some more. Methods. In fact, let's do it. They're fun. Public. Let's do get mail, get email, and set email. Okay. So because so far we only looked at the accessor, I want to show you the mutator as well, also known as setter, getter, setter, or accessor mutators. Okay. So public function. Let's call this get email. Okay. return this email. Okay, and now let's copy. This one will be set email. Okay, so how we set email? We take the argument email. We can even specify type in string. Let's say we want to make sure it's string that we're getting, and then instead of return, what we do is this email we set to the incoming email that is coming from the argument. Awesome. Okay, so we have the getters, we have the setters, and these are getters, access. Okay, that's awesome. Now in init.php we can get the full name, we can set the email. In fact, let's get the email and see first. Get email. Okay, we have the email ryan@calrad.com. that is how we instantiate. For example, let's say we want to modify it. What we can do is we can set email, because we have that method set email, and then we can pass in the new email, right? ryan@yahoo.com. okay, we can set that, and after setting, let's see if it changes. Okay, so just copy that, get email again. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so before it was Ryan, and then it set, we set the new email, so now we see ryan@yahoo.com. so as you can see, we can not only access, but we can set as well. Awesome, right? This is how we use encapsulation. You provide getters and setters so that the private stays private, and still the code outside of this class can access the properties and methods. Okay, now in the next video we're going to learn about static properties and methods. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to learn about static properties and methods. Okay, so far all the properties and methods were linked to this specific instance, right? So two different instances could have two different values for the same property. For example, we have customer. The customer is the first customer. We could create second customer. Let's call it second customer, and let's give it a name of Jen, and let's change this to Jen. Okay, so we still have the same class, right? This class has the ID, first name, last name, email. It's all same. However, every time we instantiate, based on the instantiation, we get different result, right? So we can say var_dump, and we can var_dump the second customer. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay, so the second customer we created with Jen, with the surname of Dingle and the email of Jen. So, and we still have the previous one. Okay, so we can create, class remains the same, properties remains the same, but based on the instantiation we get different result. But what if we want certain methods or properties linked to the class itself rather than to the object, right? So anytime, even if you instantiate certain properties, you want to stay linked to the class itself. So PHP allows us to have multiple properties and methods linked to the class itself rather than to the object, because so far what we have, these properties are just related to the object instantiation. As soon as you instantiate, they change. What if we want to have something static, right? So we're going to cover that here. Static properties and methods. So let's go to customer class, and let's say we want to have some kind of the ID system. Let's say last ID. Okay, so let's create a variable on top of property, and then we call it, we make it private static. Okay, so this is how we create a static property, a method. Okay, so you use static keyword. Okay, so let's say last ID, and let's set it to 0. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is when we instantiate this new customer, the ID is supplied, right? So what if the ID is not supplied? So in that case, what we can do is we can refer to the last ID and increment it. Okay, so every time a new customer is added and the ID is somehow not supplied, then we, based on the last ID, we increment by 1. Okay, so that's how we maintain the ID system. Before the first name, this ID thing, let's comment this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a simple logic here. If this ID, the one that we're getting from arguments, okay, if that is null, then what I would like to do is I would like to point to this ID, our property, and then set it to self. Now this is how you access the static properties, okay, using the self and double colon. Okay, it's very important. I'm trying to point to this property, but because it is static, I can't use this. Because it is static, I have to use self. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, so if ID is null, if null value is passed, then I take the ID, put value to this ID, and this value will be the last ID. Right now, last ID is currently sitting on the 0, so we increment. Okay, if it is null, we increment, and that becomes the ID of this one. Now also, else what happens is this ID equals ID. So if it is not null, then what do we do? In that case, if it is not null, if something is passed, then that's good. So we take that ID. That ID is whatever is passed down, that will be assigned to this ID. And then again, if we need another check here, if this ID is greater than self last ID. So if it is greater than that, then what we do is self last ID, set that to the current ID. So for example, if instead of 1 2 3 4, for example, one customer comes and give the ID of 10. So in that case, we take the highest one. Okay, if ID is greater than the self last ID, so last ID would be, let's assume it was 1, but if somebody or user come supplying the ID of 10, so in that case, if that is greater than this last ID, then we set that last ID to that ID. Okay, so if 10 comes, then it will have the value of 10. Now the next time if somebody comes with a null, then this 10 becomes 11, and that will be assigned to that user. Okay, so it's a basic logic, you got it. The main point here is you use static using this static keyword, and you access static with this self double colon. Okay, so to see this in action, why don't we create another accessor? Okay, so let's create another accessor. Because it is private, we can't access straight away. What we can do is we can make another function. Now the method public static function. Okay, this is a static function. Okay, so this will return self last ID. I forgot to give it a name, get last ID. Okay, so public static function get last ID, and it will return the self, the static property last ID. Okay, awesome. Now we can try accessing it in init.php. Okay, so init.php, I want to access the get last ID, right? So there's a difference on getting the static property. You can use the regular way, for example, like this. Okay, so var down, we can do it the regular way, such as first customer, and we want to get last ID, right? Now this is not going to work because it is a static method. We can't use the arrow, instead we use this double column. Okay, let's save this one and let's give it a try. So refresh, ID integer 0, so we got the ID of 0. Let's comment this out. Let's try on the first customer. Let's say we don't supply the ID. Let's see what happens. Null, give null, and then let's give it a try. In init.php, let's create some more customer. We have first customer, we have second customer. Let's say second customer have null. Okay, the first customer has the ID of 1, second of null, and let's create one more. Let's name it third, and then let's give it 5. Okay, ram. Okay, so we got 3 customer. So what you can do is first customer. Okay, so we instantiated. Now we can access the get last ID. This is the method we used, right? Public static get last ID. Yep, because it is static, we don't use arrow, we use double colon instead. Okay, so there is another way as well. So this way is reference it using existing instance, right? Now the next method is also there of accessing static property, and that is reference it using class name itself. Okay, so this way what you would do is, what you're trying to get the static property of belongs to this class customer, right? So you can directly refer to the class itself. So what you can do is customer, and you can use double colon and then get last ID. See, so this is another beauty of static properties. You don't need to instantiate as well. You can directly reference the class and invoke here, and you will see this sort of pattern everywhere in Laravel framework. All right, so now that you know how to work with static properties, let's have a look at it in the browser. Let's see what we get. Fresh, let me comment this out. It's all this, comment it out. Okay, so we instantiated the customers and we try and get the last ID. Awesome. So fresh. Okay, and we don't see anything. Okay, sorry, this one shouldn't be equal, this should be double equal, right? If it is equals to null, right, let's give it a try. Okay, so we see 5 is, so the last ID is set to 5. Why don't we comment this out as well? Why don't we comment this out, and let's see, let's save it again, let's see. And as you can see, 1, last ID is 1, as well as the first customer's ID is 1. So give null. Okay, let's leave null. Okay, obviously it increments. For example, let's say, let's try this one. Second customer, so the first one, let's say, let's give it 1, and then the second customer, let's give it null, and we should see 2, right? So let's see this one. So the first one is given the 1, so that's fine. Now the second one is not, it's not given anything, so it's given null. So that function should increment to based on the previous one, so it should have 2. Let's give it a try. First, as you can see, it's 2. Okay, so that's how it works. The key here is you can create static properties and methods using this static keyword. Okay, and you access within the class using self double colon. You can refer to the class itself without having to instantiate and all this stuff. You can even go directly. Okay, so this pattern you will see all the time in Laravel. For example, you can refer to the model and double colon. You can use create method to create new instance and save to the database. Okay, so all that stuff, now that you know static properties, it will be easier when you work with frameworks like Laravel. All right, so this is it. I'll see you in the next video, and in the next video we're going to learn about namespaces. All right, see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to learn about namespaces and this use keyword as well. Okay, so if you have two classes with the same name, PHP wouldn't know which one is being referred, right? That's common sense. Obviously it would be confused. So to solve such issue, PHP allows us to use namespace keyword. Okay, so namespace is kind of like a path in file system. For example, bookstore slash domain slash customer, it's like that. But the difference is each section of namespace is separated by this backslash. Okay, so it looks a bit weird because normally you would use in file system like bookstore slash something, right? But namespace is this way. You do it this way. Okay? So it's kind of like paths in the file system. However, before we use namespace, one thing to note is that even though namespace and the file path will usually be the same, this is not mandatory. Okay? This is not necessary. As a developer, you can enforce the namespace. So what do I mean by that? You will see right now. Okay, so let's do that. Let's use this namespace. The first thing we want to do is let's begin by moving these two classes that we have, book and customer. Let's move them in a folder directory here. So let me create a new folder and let's call it domain. Okay, so domain, book and customer, and let me drag them inside. Okay, now when you do that, if you have any open tabs, make sure you close. Just say don't save because it's already moved there. Okay, so we got the init here, that's fine, and then we've moved these two files, two classes inside domain. Great. Now if you try to access this, let's see what we get here. Refresh. Require once, failed to open, no such file or directory. That was expected. Now let's go there. Now what we can do is we can add namespace here. So this file, we're telling PHP that this file is in this namespace. Okay, so we specify that. As a developer, we have control. It doesn't have to actually match the directory structure. Let's go ahead and let's add namespace. So what namespace you want to use? Let's say bookstore. Okay, that makes sense. And then let's call it its domain. Okay, by this PHP will understand anytime we want to refer to this book class, it is in the namespace of this. Okay, now we could go crazy and add anything. Okay, so that would work still, but obviously this doesn't make sense, right? So just make sure the namespaces make sensible, so it's obviously easy to understand. Okay? Same as book, the customer also is in the same namespace, right? What we're saying is these two classes are in the namespace of domain. So bookstore domain. What you can do is, now that you have specified the namespace, you can go to init.php and on top you can use them. So how do you use them? It's pretty straightforward. That's what I was talking about, using the use keyword. Yeah. What we do is we say use, this is a special keyword, and then bookstore domain, this is the namespace we give. Now in that namespace, because both of these class have this namespace, right? Now what we're trying to get is we're trying to get the actual class book, actual class customer. So both of them are in this namespace, so that's fine. Now we need to go one step further and specify the class name as well. So we do that like so. So both of them in the same class name, and then we get the actual class and we use. This is how we can use. Okay, now let's copy paste and let's do the same for customer. Awesome. Now we have the namespace in place and we can use them using this use keyword, and you see this pattern all the time in Laravel framework. Okay, so once you understand this, once you go through this, you'll have a great time in Laravel. All right, so it should work now. Let's give it a try. Refresh. Now we manually assign it like so. Now later we're going to use the autoloader. Okay, so until we do that, let's fix this one because this has moved to domain, right? AIN. Okay. Okay, so it has moved to domain slash, so we just change that. Now let's give it a try. Bookstore domain book not found. Okay, I didn't save the file before, so just make sure you have saved your both classes. Okay, and then you can see that. Let me also get rid of this at the moment, and instead we can see the var_dump. That's appropriate. Let's put it back to first customer. Awesome. Let's give it a try. As you can see, this object is in this namespace, everything, and we have this namespace added in front. Now if you wouldn't use this pattern, what you could also do is, let's comment this out. What you could also do is, because we're trying to instantiate this book class, right? So here we are instantiating a new book. Now instead of using like so, we could even do this bookstore slash domain slash book as well. Let's save this one. Let's give it a try, and as you can see, it still works. Okay, but obviously this is very difficult, so we simply use this use keyword and specify like so. Okay, so that's how it works. Now one more thing, what if you had two similar class names? You might have another folder called library, and that would also probably have book.php. So in that case it would be conflicting, right? So what you can do in such situation is you can use this as keyword as well. Okay, so if you had, for example, let's try on this one. If you had another library folder and you had book.php and you had to import on the same file, so in that case you could do something like as, and then say my book. Okay, something like that. So you can use this as keyword to personalize, give it a different name, so that it doesn't conflict. This would work. Okay, so for example, what I could do now is I can take this my book. Now instead of instantiating this book, I can say my book. Okay, now let me save this one. Let's go and refresh. As you can see, it still works. Okay. So this is namespace. I'm sure you're pretty much clear with namespace. Okay, now in the next, let me put it back the way it was. Okay, save this one. Let's refresh, check it again. It works good. Now in the next video we're going to move on to autoloader. Okay, instead of manually loading like this, imagine you have 100 classes. In a bigger project you would have, so you wouldn't like to write like this 100 times. Okay, so I'll show you autoloader in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to learn about auto-loading. Okay, so auto-loading is a PHP feature that allows your program to search and load files automatically given some set of predefined rules. Okay, so autoloader is simply a PHP function that gets a class name as a parameter, and it is expected to load that file. Okay, so let's see how it works. Let's write this awesome function and let's see how it works. That way we don't have to manually require. Imagine you have a bigger project with lots of files, you wouldn't like to do it. Okay, so how does that work? Let's see. So autoloader function to load classes. Okay, so what you do is we start creating a function autoloader. Okay, so this will take class name as a parameter. Okay, first thing we need to do is we create a variable called last slash. Okay, now how do we get the last slash? As you can see, we need to identify all these so that we can get the last one, and the last string will be the class name, right? So first let's identify this last slash using the strpost string position method. Okay, so this method, it will take class name as the first argument. Okay, and then this is where it will try to find the backslash. Now we need to escape the backslash, so we need another backslash as well. Okay, so it will take the class name, find the backslash, that would be the position. Because the counting begins from 0, we need to add 1. Now let's create a class name variable. Class name equals to substring. We will try to get the substring out of that. So we give a class name, and then from where it will begin, where we want to extract the string, wherever we encounter the last slash. Okay, last slash. So that's done. Now let's create a directory. Directory equals to str replace. We use this method, and then this one will take the backslash. Okay, and then replace that backslash with /. Okay, and then class name. Okay, so this is how, see how it's working. We give the namespace. Now it will find that out, and then it will take the string out of the class name that begins from this position, and then it will replace that with this one. So this is the normal way of writing slash this path name. Yeah, so it does that, and then now file name equals to, go to the directory, concatenate, and we do the slash directory which would hold the class name, and then we concatenate and say .php. Okay, so you don't need to memorize this function. You don't need to even write this function, because these days in modern PHP development you would use something like PSR for auto loading. Okay, but it's very good to know how it works, how this auto loading works behind the scene. So it gives you a very good understanding of how it works behind the scene. Okay, so finally what we can do is, now that we have all this, we can require once. Okay, so require once, and then we give the file name. Okay, so now we can comment this out. Now finally what we can do is we can use this special auto load register method that is available in PHP, and then we supply the auto load. Okay, so this way the files, all these classes would load automatically. This function will find out class name. That's how it works. Okay, so let's give it a try. Refresh. As you can see, it is still working perfectly fine. So this is the concept behind the auto loading. Okay, now like I said, you'd use PSR for auto loading in real world, but this will give you a very good understanding of how it works. So this is it for this lesson. Now in the next lesson we're going to talk about inheritance. Okay, so I was talking about extending from parent class to children and all that stuff. So that's coming right next. Thank you very much. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video you're going to learn about inheritance. Okay, so how one class can extend from another class and inherit the properties and methods. Okay, so from parent to children classes. Okay, so inheritance is the ability to pass the implementation of the class from parent class to children class using extends keyword. Okay, so when a class extends from another class, for example a child class extends from parent class, it gets all the properties and methods that are not defined as private. So if it is defined as private, obviously you don't get anything because private is private. But if it is defined as protected or public, they will be available to another that children class, the one that is extending, right? So how can we use this in our application? So let's have a look on a customer class. Okay, so it contains the first name, surname, email, and ID, right? So these things, if you think about it, these things can actually belong to a class person, because as you can see a person would have the ID, first name, last name, email, right? So the benefit of that is if we move this to person class, and instead of having all this here, we extend from person. Okay, so when we extend, it's like having all these here, it's like having here, because when you extend you just don't write it down like this, but still you have access to all these properties. You can use this to access the properties and all that. Now private is exception, obviously it has to be protected in public, but yes, you can extend. So if we move this to person, the benefit is not only customer class, later we might have a guest class or the librarian class. They also need to have the first name, surname, and email, right? Because librarian also a person, just like a customer. Guest is also like another person. So if we move this to person class, then we could benefit not only that customer could extend from the person, or the future class we might create such as guest or librarian also could extend. Okay, so that's the, so let's do that. Let's move this to person and we extend this class customer. So let's begin by creating a function, or sorry, creating a file inside domain, and let's name it person.php. Okay, so person.php. Yes, done. Now let's begin with PHP. Let's add namespace bookstore / domain. This is the one we've been using for all these. Okay, now class person. Now this would have, now we're not going to use private. What we're going to do is instead we use protected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let me just comment out so that we can see. Okay, so first I'm going to move only the first name and surname. Okay, so go to person, let's change it to protected so that it can be available to the children classes, the one that extends, right? Protected first name, protected surname. Awesome. Let's also add this constructor method. And this will take two arguments, first name and then surname. Okay, and then we set this property, this first name we set to first name, the one we get from the argument. This surname equals to surname. Awesome. Okay, so we got the properties, we got the method, constructor method. Now let's create some more methods for accessibility of the get name and set name. Okay, so public function get first name, return this first name, and then let's create another one, get surname. So public function okay. So we got this class, new class. It has the properties, first name, surname. It has the constructor method, and it has this get first name and get surname methods. Awesome. We're doing all this so that we can extend here, right? So back to customer, class customer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to extends person, right? So when we extend, everything in this class, all these properties and methods are available here as if they are here. Okay, all of them are available as long as they are not set to private. As long as they are protected and public, they are available. Now that we're extending, even though we don't have the first name and last name, we are referencing here as if they are available in this class. Okay, so it works. It still works. Okay, so in init.php we have all this code. We are instantiating all this. We are instantiating the customer. Customer is extending the person, so that we have the benefit of having this first name and last name without having actually in this class. So it all works. If you give it a try, refresh, it all works. Okay. Now there is one more thing we can do. This first name and surname, it is repeated. It is already in the person class. So how can we get benefit of that? We don't want to repeat the code, right? So yeah, we can simply get rid of it. And instead, what we can do is we can use this parent, okay, this parent, and then these two column. So this way we can access the properties of the parent, okay, properties of methods on the parent. Now in this case we're trying to access the constructor, right? As you can see, this constructor, it has first name and last name, so we just refer to that. And you saw this pattern earlier as well. We don't need to instantiate anything. We can just access we saw this in the static properties. When we are accessing the static properties, we use the same pattern, right? So when you're extending from one class to another, you can access the parent class properties and method like so. Okay, so in this case we are accessing the constructor, and we can pass the first name, surname. In fact, I shouldn't have deleted here because that is needed. Okay, because that is the argument we're getting, right? So in fact, let me go to person. Just let me copy this. I still need this one. Okay, so this is coming from the instance. Okay, so all this will come, and instead of processing here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it to the parent. First name and then surname. Awesome. So not only that we are depending on parent for the first name and surname, we are depending on parent to process this data as well. So now if we need to extend, if any other class need to extend the person so that they can use the first name, last name, these properties and methods, they don't have to write it down. They can simply extend and it works. Okay, so this is how it works, extend, and this is inheritance. So let's give it a try. Refresh. Call to undefined method. This should be construct, not constructor. Construct tr. Let me copy this. Save this. Let's give it a try, and it works fine. Okay, so this is how you extend from one class to another. Okay, so this is called inheritance, and we also covered the parent. To use the parent property of method, you simply use parent instead of this and the following double colon. All right, So this is it for this lesson. Now in the next lesson you're going to learn about overriding methods. Okay, what if the parent class have a method something like get first name, and you want to create the same method in the child class, the one that is extension. What happens when you have the same method on both parent and child? What happens and how you can continue to use both of them? Okay, so you will learn about all that in the next section, where we will be talking about overriding methods. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video you're going to learn about overriding methods. Okay, so what if you have a same method in the parent as well as the child class? How does that work? Let's see that in action. First I'm going to go to person.php and let me create a simple method. Okay, so let's say just for testing. All right, public function say hi. Okay, and then this function will simply say hi, return hi, what's up, and let's concat the name as well, this first name. Okay, so public function say hi, this function will return hi, what's up, and the name. All right, that's great. Now let's go to customer.php, and this customer is extending that person, right? This person has the say hi. Okay, so let's go to the customer, and this class also let's have the same function, okay, same method. Let's see what happens. Public function say hi, and what we say is we return, what do we say, howdy, this first name. Let's leave it. Okay, now let's even comment this out for the moment. Okay, now this class is extending person. This person has this say hi method. Now this class, because it is extending, I can use that method from this for this customer, right? Let's go to init.php. Now this first customer is the new customer using this class, customer class. We have nowhere person class. We don't have person class here anymore, but we don't need that because customer is in fact extending the person. Okay, so var done first customer, let's get, let's say hi, let's see what we get. Even though this method is not in the customer class because it is extending from person, you get it, right? Let's refresh. Hi Ryan, what's up? Awesome. So we can use the method from the parent because we're extending. We already know that, nothing new. Now let's see this one, what happens. Now howdy, now this customer class has the same method. Now let's see what we get here. First you can see howdy Ryan. So when you have this same method defined on parent as well as children, the one defined in the children will take the precedence. Okay, so the one defined in the children will get the priority. Okay, simple as that. Now we can still access the parent method as well if we want to. For example, in this customer, let's say we still want to get the access the parents to say hi as well. That's simple because we already used that. So let's do that. Concat. And how do we access the parent method? We use the parent, right? Parent keyword. And then we access using this double colon and the name of the method, say hi. Simple as that. Okay. Now let's try. As you can see, now we get our one, the child's implementation as well as the parent's implementation. Okay, so this is overriding. It's very straightforward. If you have the same name, it gets overridden. Now in the next lesson we're going to talk about abstract classes. Okay, so I'll see you in the very next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to learn about abstract classes. Okay, now after the abstract classes we will cover interface. So these two topics are they can get a bit confusing, they can get a bit hard to understand. So if you don't get it at first time, make sure to repeat. Okay, don't give up. All right, so first, abstract classes, what are those? So let me explain a bit before diving deep into it. Okay, so you can extend from only one parent class each time. Okay, just like we did here. Customer extends from person. Now, it cannot extend from person and another few more of them. No, you can just extend from one. Okay, so that's a bit of a problem. So what if we want to make this hierarchical tree more complicated? Okay? For example, we can create children classes. That's another solution. Okay, so those children classes will extend from customer. Okay, the customer currently is extending from person, but we can go ahead and make some more other classes that will extend from customer. For example, basic customer and premium customer. Okay, so they will extend from customer. Currently customer is extend from person, but when basic and premium class also extend from customer, that means they get all the properties and method of customer, obviously because they're extending from customer. But because customer is also extending from person, this tree gets extended. So as a result, those basic and premium classes extend from customer, but they will have access to the person class, whatever is defined in the person properties and methods, because customer is extending to person, from customer, from person to customer, to basic customer, to premium customer. That's how it flows. Okay, so you got that right. Now let's see it in practice. Okay, let's create, in fact, let me show the sidebar. Inside domain folder, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create new folder, customer. Okay, customer. Inside this folder, I'm going to create two files, basic. Okay, and then I create another one, and this one I call it premium. Okay, now basic class, what it will have is, first of all, we begin with PHP, then we give namespace. Now namespace, what we can do is go to book, let's copy this, go to basic namespace, let's paste that in. Now we need to add customer at the end, right? Okay, namespace bookstore domain customer, perfect. Now what we're going to do is, this class is going to extend to person, right? So what we can do is we can say use bookstore slash domain slash customer. Okay, so use that. Now if you notice, this is also extending from person, but we didn't say use. That's because this person and customer, they're in the same namespace, as you can see. That's why I didn't have to use. But because this basic is in a different directory, not on the same namespace, I had to use. Okay, great. Now let's create this class basic extends customer. Now when it extends, it gets all the properties and methods of customer as well as person, because customer is extending person. So what I can do is I can add some more methods here. Okay, add more methods. Okay, public function get monthly fee. Okay, so this is kind of a membership thing here. So basic customer, how much get monthly fee they will pay. If return, let's say 5. Okay, now how much they can borrow. So let's do another one, public function get amount to borrow. So how many books they can borrow? So they pay $5, and then for loop function get amount to borrow, return 3. Let's say 3. Okay, so that's great. Now let's create one more. Public function get type. This will simply return the string basic or premium. So public function get type return basic. Okay, so this is our basic class. Okay, let's save this one. Now let's copy this and let's use this in premium as well. It's going to be pretty much similar. Okay, let me save this, close this, open it again. Okay, so this is all good. Class premium, class premium extends customer, public function get monthly fee. Now for the premium, let's charge more. Let's charge 10. Okay, and then public function get amount to borrow. They will get to borrow 10 as well because they're paying more. They get to borrow more, and then return premium. Awesome. So we got these two classes. They're extending customer. Okay, now let's head over to init.php and test things out. Okay, let me comment this out. That's done. Let's get rid of this as well. Okay, so we have the autoloader use, pretty simple. Let me hide the sidebar. Okay, so we got the new book, we got the customer. Okay, now what I'm going to do is very important and it can be confusing, so pay close attention. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function. Okay, so this function will check if customer is valid to borrow the books. Okay, so let me write this function first. Function check if valid. Okay, and this will return customer get amount to borrow. Okay, if that is greater than or equals to the number of books, and we can use this count method. Okay, and then we pass the books. Okay, so this method, what it will return is it will return the customer amount to borrow greater than or equal to count. To borrow, we have this method in both basic and premium. Okay, so it will return the number. In the basic it will return 3, premium it will return 10. Okay, so how this function will work is we will type hint. Okay, we will type hint because this function need the customer first, right? So it needs the customer. It doesn't care whether it's basic or premium. It needs the customer. So we can use type hint the classes as well. Before we saw the type hinting like an integer or string, but we can type hint the class as well. Okay, so customer and then customer. So we're referring to this customer class. Okay, and then the second argument is books. So this function will take the class, the customer class itself, and then it will return the result. Okay, the second parameter is books. So based on how many books is taken, now we can instantiate. So what we can do is we can var dom. We use this method. Again, inside this var dom, we use this method check if valid. We invoke this method. Now this method takes 2 arguments. As you saw, it takes the class. The customer is this one. The first customer is the new instance. Okay, that is the first argument. And then the second argument is books. So books is Harry Potter, the books instance. Okay, let's take this one. Let's pass in here. Now let's save this one, and if you go and refresh the page, we will get an error. Okay, on cut error, call to undefined method. The customer, in the customer domain, it doesn't find get amount to borrow method. Okay, so this check if valid fails. So why is that happening? The reason it's happening because the customer class does not know anything about this. The customer class doesn't have this get amount to borrow method, because this method is in the child classes. The basic and premium, they extend from customer, but they implemented this one. Customer doesn't know anything about this, right? The parent class doesn't know anything about this method. So when we type hint the customer, we get an error because the parent doesn't know. And this is not good because we don't want to depend on children to implement the methods and do all sorts of things. We want to control. We want this to flow from parent to children. Okay, and it is a problem because children components, what methods they are implementing, because when we in a bigger application we need to type hint. We can't go to basic, premium, and there might be more classes extending customer. We can't go digging deeper, it's going to be a mess. So what we would like to do is we would like to type hint the parent sort of class, so that all its implementation, all other classes that are extending to this one, such as basic, premium, or whatever, we don't have to worry about finding them out. We just type in the main class, and every other class that is extending this class will automatically be in control, right? So the only way we can do that is we has a parent class only if we can define such methods. We tell the children, okay, you want to extend from me, that's fine, but make sure you implement all these methods I tell you. Make sure you do it. So this class has to be like that. You can't let this the children let loose. They need more control. Okay, so that's when this abstract class, this concept comes in. The whole point is, as a parent class, you want to control, you want to make sure that the certain methods are implemented in your children component. You don't want to have all the code. For example, if you want to make sure your children, whoever will extend you want to make sure that they will have this method. For example, get amount to borrow, you want to make sure they have, but you don't actually want to have this exact code, the exact function definition inside of you. You don't want that. You just want to tell them the name of the function. You just make sure that you implement this, but you don't worry about the code. Okay, so that's when abstract classes comes in. Okay, so how do we begin implementing that? Using converting our customer class. Currently it is a normal class, but we need to convert it to abstract class and define certain abstract methods that are already implemented in the children components. They did it independently, but we have to define here as an abstract function, abstract method. Okay, so let's do that in the next lesson. It's been very long, and I know it's been quite long and might be confusing too, but this is a confusing thing anyway. Even when I was learning, it was confusing for me as well. So follow me on the next video, or maybe go through this same video one more time, but just make sure you get it. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video, and we will continue this one on the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now, continuing on from the previous lesson, we had a long talk, but I'm sure that long talk made you understand. Okay, so what we need to do is we want to make sure our children, whoever extending us, they implement certain methods for sure. For that, first thing we need to do is we need to make our class abstract class. Okay, so the way we can do that is simply adding the abstract keyword in the front. Okay, so customer class, we added abstract, so we made it abstract class. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is we're going to define So right after this constructor, okay, right after this construct method, let's define some abstract methods. Okay, so these methods we are defining because we want to make sure our children, whoever extend us, implement this method. Okay, so the problem we had when we try to run this code, because it was implemented by children, so there was an error. We can do it, we can type in like that. We didn't want to go and type in based on the children. All these methods, the children have these three methods: get monthly fee, get amount to borrow, and get type. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, go to customer, and I'm going to say, let's create this abstract methods. Okay, public, sorry, begin with abstract, and public function get monthly fee. Right, this is one of the method implemented by children. Okay, you want to do it, doesn't matter, do it, but I define here as a parent. So get monthly fee. Another one they have is get amount to borrow. Copy that, paste that in. Next one is get type, and it is same for premium as well. Okay, so do that. Now what happened is they're extending customer class. It is an abstract class now, and it has specified these three abstract methods. Okay, the rest of the content can stay here, no problem. Okay, so all these can stay here, no problem, but these methods, the children have to implement these methods. Okay, so as you can see, we're just specifying the method, we're not writing the actual code. Okay, we just say you do this, you know. So we define the methods here: static methods, abstract methods. Abstract methods like this will force all the children that extend this class to implement them. Okay, simple as that. To init.php, and before we try this out, one thing about abstract class is that they cannot be instantiated. Okay, so like we did here, customer, new customer, we can't do that. Abstract class cannot be instantiated. Let's refresh, and what do we see here? Uncaught error, cannot instantiate abstract class, as you can see. So why we did all this work if we can't instantiate? Because now we will instantiate the basic, premium, and all that stuff. But when we type int, we don't have to worry about basic, premium, this and that. We just type into the main class. Okay, we just type into the main class, and then when we instantiate, we can instantiate whatever we want. Okay, so that's the benefit. Now it might not make a lot of sense because we are all doing in the same file here, trying everything here, but in a bigger application you will clearly see the difference. Okay, when you work in a big frameworks like Laravel, then you will understand all this. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to import, I need to use bookstore domain customer basic. Okay, first let's do the basic, and we'll implement we'll bring in premium as well. Now instead of instantiating customer, I use the basic. Okay, now basic doesn't have this first name, last name, email, and all that, but because it is extending customer, and customer is extending person, it reaches there from very down to the top, it reaches. So as a result, we can instantiate like so. Okay, so let's save this one. So instead of instantiating customer, I instantiated basic. Okay, now we still have this check valid, we still type ending the main customer. So let's see how it works. Refresh, as you can see, true, we can borrow. How cool is that? A lot of work, but the point here is to understand how things work, how this class, this basic classes extend from customer, customer extend from there. As a result, this basic class have all the access to the properties and methods of customer as well as person. And when we instantiate, we cannot instantiate the main class because it has been abstract. However, we instantiate whether we want basic or premium, but we can still type in the main class. How beautiful is that? Now I know you must have been tired, right? But before I close this video, just one more thing, let's do it. Okay, so this check valid function takes type in the customer. That works for the children ones, that extending this one, so that's the beauty. Now second argument was books. Now this books, in our case it was only one. Now we're testing out the basic, and as you can see, the basic has, it can borrow up to 3. Okay, so what happens if we borrow more than 3? Do we get this to false? Well, we should, right, if it is working. So why don't we quickly test that out, and then we can say goodbye. So let me copy this, and let me paste 3 more times. Okay, so we have total 4 instances, and simply name it, leave it as it is. Let's add 1, let's add 2 to this one, and let's add 3. Okay, so 1 2 3 4, we have 4 instances of the book. Okay, now check if valid. It was only 1 count, so just 1. But now let's put it in an array. Okay, now let me copy this, okay, and comma separated. Let me paste 3 more times. So we got 4 books, we borrowed 4 books. Okay, so change that to 1, change that to 2, change that to 3. Now let's save this one. Now before we were only borrowing 1, so we got to see the true, but now we are borrowing 4. Let's see what we get. Let me refresh. As you can see, it's false, can't borrow. Okay, this is it for abstract class. Now all these concepts that you're learning here will be extremely helpful to understand the framework, how it works behind the scene. Okay, so you'll be at home. All right, so this is it. In the next video we're going to talk about interface. That's one of the last difficult concept, but now that you have already understand the abstract, it will be pretty easy. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Hello there, how are you doing? So in this lesson, let's learn about interfaces. Okay, so an interface is an OOP element that groups a set of function declarations without implementing them. Okay, so this is almost similar to what we did in the previous lesson in abstract classes. Okay, so let's have a look on customer.php. Here what we did is we defined the functions to make sure that the children classes, the one that extends this class, they will have to implement these methods. Okay, so this is how we used abstract methods. So this interface is almost similar. Okay, so there are a few differences. So the interface are different from abstract classes since they cannot contain any implementation at all, whereas abstract classes could mix both method definition and implemented ones. So what I mean by that is, as you can see, this is the abstract class we did in the last lesson. So we defined abstract methods, but at the same time we have other regular methods as well. We have construct, we have the properties, we could all mix it up with abstract classes. But with interface, you can't do that. Interface can only have the methods that you would like to force implementation. Okay, so interface cannot contain any properties of function. So first thing, we have to move all the code from customer to the person class. Okay, so from the developer's point of view, using a class that implements an interface is like writing a contract. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this interface. Okay, then this interface can be extended by another class, and that is done using the implement keyword. Okay, so currently, as you can see, this abstract class has been implemented using the extends keyword, but as soon as this becomes interface, when you want to extend customer interface, you would use implement instead of extends. Okay, so that's coming next. Let's not worry about that. First thing, let's move this code from customer class, all this, let's move it to person. Okay, because we're going to make it an interface. Okay, so let's begin. Let me get rid of this. Okay, so let's copy this one and let's move it to person. Okay, next, what do we have here? Let's get rid of it. The construct method also we can move. Okay, let's replace this with that, and we don't need to use this parent because we're already here. Okay, next, what we do, we have these, copy, okay, right after the construct, yes. Okay, so let's get rid of all this. Okay, so all we have is abstract methods. Okay, we're going to move all these methods as well, all these accessors and mutators. Okay, so let's copy and let's move to person. Okay, so what do we have here? We have all the properties, we have construct method, we have all this, we have methods, we have accessors and all that stuff. Okay, great. So all this has been moved to person. Now customer, we're going to make it an interface. In order to make this interface, all we have to do is, let's get rid of this. All we do is use this interface keyword. Okay, so interface customer, simple as that. Okay, now we don't need abstract, let's get rid of it. And we need to make sure that it is public, because that's the whole point, right? Interface only care about public methods, which are the ones that other developers can use, right? Or other classes can use. So public function get monthly fee, get amount to borrow, and get type. Great. Now, previously these basic and premium class, they extend customer, right? But now the customer has changed. So what it's going to do is it's going to use implement instead. So let's do that. Class basic implements customer. Okay, so this is how you implement interface. Let's do, okay, so class basic implements customer. Great. Now this basic, and let's do the same with premium. Okay, let's paste. Okay, so basic and premium, both of them are implementing customer, which means these methods they have to have, and they already have, so that's good. We're good to go. Okay, so let's go to init.php. So this way we ensure that your class will always have the methods declared in the interface regardless of the implementation. Let's go and refresh, boolean true. Okay, so it seems to be working fine because all we're doing is we're using these methods. Now let's try one more. Var down. Let's get this customer and let's try to get its type. Okay, get type, which we have here. If it is basic, it is basic. If not, it's premium. Okay, so let's save this one and let's give it a try. Refresh. As you can see, it works. Okay, so it's implementing the interface. Now that these basic and premium are implementing the interface customer, they have only these methods available. What happened to all those methods we had previously? which has now been moved to person, right? For example, get surname, get first name, and all this. How do we access? Because definitely this is it has nothing to do with person, right? Because it's not extending person or anything. So how does it work? Now we're going to cover that probably in the next video, but in this video, let's try accessing one of these properties. We could do it before, but now that we have changed the customer class, made it interface, moved all the methods away from this class to person, now let's see what happens, what error we get. Okay, so let's go to init. Now instead of get type, in fact, let's copy and let's put it down, and then let me try to get the first name. Okay, so let's see if it works. Obviously not. So the error we get on code error, call to undefined method customer basic get first name, undefined method. So obviously it has no idea, right? Because they're implementing customer, and customer has defined these methods. That's it. It doesn't know anything about person class, neither basic or premium. So how do we fix this issue? We will discuss that in the next video. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now welcome to this second part of the interface. Okay, so in our application we need to make sure that basic and premium, they have access to this person class. Okay, so how do we fix that problem? It's pretty easy. What you can do is class basic implements customer. Not just that it can implement, it can also extend at the same time. Okay, so what you do is class basic extends, and we want to extend to person, right? So let's do person, and implements customer. You can leave it as it is. Okay, so this way we can extend to another class as well as implement the interface. Okay, so this way we can extend to another class as well as implement the interface customer. Okay, so it's pretty awesome. Now that we have extended to person, let's give it a try. This method, we had error before because we're trying to get the first name which is in the person, and there was no way we could access that. But now that we have extend, let's give it a try. Save. Okay, person, we need to include this one, I guess. So and we'll simply paste and change this customer to person. Okay, now let's give it a try. Person.php line 31. Let's make sure we close this. This is the construct. Okay, so this construct, this ends here and right after this one. Okay, let's close that. Save. Also have to make sure that we do not repeat. When I was copy pasting, we already had this method here, so let me get rid of this one because it has been duplicated. Okay, so first name, surname, get last ID, surname, again it has been repeated. Let me get rid of this. Get full name, get email, set email, say hi also has been repeated. Okay, let me get rid of this one referencing to parent. Okay, now let's save this one and refresh, and as you can see, it's working fine. Now as you can see, these basic classes, this basic class, and we can do the same with person premium as well. Class premium extends person, implements customer. Right, now they're not only implementing the interface, they are extending to the person class as well. Awesome. As a result, from init.php we could get first name, we could get full name, all that. Okay, so these methods are defined in person and it works. Okay, that's great. So we learned how to implement the interface and at the same time extend to another class. Okay, now another important concept here, we saw this before, that one class can extend another class, right? Now with interface also that works. Okay, one interface can extend another interface. So what we just did is we implemented the interface and at the same time extends the person. But if you go to customer.php, it is the interface. This interface also can extends another interface. Okay, so another interface could have some other methods defined like so. So when this class extend to that interface, then those functions also will be mandatory to implement on these children components, the ones that are extending this customer interface. Okay, so similar concept. Before we know the class can extend from another class, in a similar fashion interface can also extend from another interface. Okay, so let's do this. Let's create another interface and let's name it pair. Okay, so the concept here is let's have this another interface, pair interface. So that would implement two methods. One is pay the amount, and another is extent of taxes. Okay, so these two methods we want to implement. So I haven't created this interface yet, but let's put it here anyway. Interface customer extends payer. Okay, this is the one we're going to create next. Now let's go to domain. Now inside this domain folder, let's create this interface. Let's save this as pair.php. Okay, now let's give it a namespace of bookstore domain, same as the customer, same again, and then we define the interface pair, and we define the methods that we would want to force other classes. Okay, so we want to make sure that they implement this one. So public function, let's make this pay method. Okay, and let's also type hint. It will be a floating number type. Okay, amount. All right, now let's create another function, is extent of taxes. Okay, now these two methods we would like to add. So we created this interface. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to customer.php, and I have extended this interface. Okay, interface is extending from another interface. Now that customer has extended from payer, these basic and premium are forced to implement these methods. Okay, you got it right? Because customer extend from payer, as a result these basic and premium, they were extending person, they were extending from customer, but customer also extend from payer. As a result they have to implement these methods as well. So pay and its extent of taxes. Okay, so let's do that in the basic and premium. Now let's save it just as it is and let's give it a try. Let's see what error we get. Refresh, we're not getting an error. Let's try accessing one of these methods, for example pay. Okay, so let's give it a try. init.php, and what I would like to do is var dump, and let's take this customer, first customer, and what I would like to say is first customer would like to pay some money. Okay, so it would pay, let's say 1000. It's a floating point, that's why I use this. Let's save this one and let's give it a try. Refresh. Okay, we get the error, call to undefined method basic pay, so it doesn't know yet. That's because the children haven't implemented this method. They have to, because it's extending, but they haven't done it yet. So let's do that. So back to basic. So what we can do is down here we can write this function, public function pay takes the float and it will return, let's return paying amount. Okay, so now in PHP, I'm sure you know you can use the variable inside the double quotes, not on the single quotes but with the double quotes. Okay, now same with another method, public function is extent of taxes, and this basic class, what we're going to say to the basic customer is we're going to say you gotta pay tax, man. Okay, so now that we have implemented these two methods, let's go and give it a refresh. As you can see, paying 1,000. Awesome. So this is the beauty of interface. You interface and the abstract classes, they force the children to implement those methods. Okay, so why don't we do the same for premium as well? Let's copy, let's paste here. Okay, now in premium, let's make some small change. What we can do is let's give him a nice message, because he's a premium, he will be extent of tax. So don't worry about paying tax, you should be happy. All right, so let's try this another method as well. Now that we have implemented, let's come here, let's copy this, paste here. Now instead of pay, let's say is save this one, refresh. You gotta pay tax, man, because it's a basic customer. Now what if we instantiate a premium customer? Let's do that first. Premium customer, we need to import premium as well. Okay, so basic. Okay, now premium customer, new premium, and then let's change it to Jan. Okay, now what I can do is premium customer is extent of taxes. Okay, I need to make sure I have the underscore here. Premium customer, it's typo here, premium customer, save. Okay, we're getting this error because what we did here in premium is we extend, but we forgot to use on top. So let's do that. Customer, sorry, person. Okay, now let's give it a try, and as you can see, don't worry about paying tax for the premium user. All right, so you learn about interfaces. Interface can extend from another interface, the classes can extend from another classes, and at the same time extend from another interface as well. So see this dynamic. So all this, it can be very confusing when you're just starting, but just go through this maybe one more time, just understand the basic concept. As the time goes on, it will make perfect sense and you will be comfortable understanding these concepts. Okay, so these concepts can be quite complicated to sink into your brain for the first time. You know, as you continue to work along, as you work with frameworks, big frameworks like Laravel, all these becomes your second nature, and everything starts to make perfect sense over time. Okay, it just doesn't happen straight away. So if you don't get it 100%, don't worry. Just know that interface are there, so that any other class that implements that interface, they are bound to use those methods. So it's kind of like a contract, signing the contract, so that's that. It's awesome dynamics of object-oriented programming, and this is the basic overview of interface. Now in the next lesson we're going to talk about polymorphism. Okay, so I'll see you in the very next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this lesson, let's talk about polymorphism. Okay, so before we start writing code, let's go through some theory here. Polymorphism is an object-oriented programming feature that allows us to work with different classes that implement the same interface. Okay, so this is super important to understand. Okay, so what it's saying is it allows us to work with different classes, multiple classes that implement the same interface. So in our case, what are those different classes? They are basic and premium, right? But they implement the same interface, right? They implement the same interface, which is customer. Basic also extends the customer, premium also extends the customer. The customer itself also extends from another interface called payer. Okay, so that's what we're trying to understand here. Allows us to work with the different classes that implement the same interface. Okay, and there's a big benefit of this one, and which we're going to try very soon now. Okay, now imagine that we have a function that, given a payer, checks whether it is exempt of taxes or not, and makes it pay some amount of money. Okay, so same as we did before in the few lessons earlier, the type hinting. Yeah, so we give the payer, and we don't worry about whether it's a basic or whether it's a premium. The type hinting will work automatically. Okay, so we'll see that in action. Okay, so we'll come back to this section. All right, so let's go ahead and write some code that will check the payer, that will process the payment. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment. In fact, we don't need these ones, so let's get rid of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function. Okay, let me do it on top right here. Okay, process payment. Okay, so function process payment. Now this will take the payer. Okay, type hint payer. Okay, so we can type hint, and we can type hint the interface as well. Before we did the same with class, but now we can do the same with interface as well. Okay, that's the beauty of it. Okay, so payer, now when we type in the payer, it will, behind the scene, it will work all other classes that implements this payer. So in our case, basic and premium, we don't have to explicitly say basic, premium, or maybe some other types will extend from payer in future as our application grow up. We don't have to worry about all that. All we do is we just reference to the main interface, this payer, and everything will work seamlessly behind the scene. Okay, so that's the beauty. So we type in the interface, and then what we do is we give the float. Okay, now given the money, it will check if payer is extent of taxes. If that's the case, what I can say is I can return some message like you are a lucky one. Else what I would like to say is I would like to accept the amount, shorthand multiply equals to, let's say, 1.20% tax. Okay, and then now payer will pay this amount with tax. Okay, So what is happening here is we have this method, we have this function. This will type into the interface, and it will take the amount, and it will check if the payer is extent of taxes or not. If it is, it will show this message. If not, it will apply the taxes and then make the payer pay. The beauty of this one is we don't have to define basic, premium, or any other type. We just type in the main interface and it works. Okay, so let's give it a try. We are importing this one on top, so let's go here. Okay, bookstore domain. Let me see the folder directory here. Payer domain and then payer. Okay, now that we have this process payment function, let's give it a try, and we're going to try on both basic and premium. Okay, so let's begin with var_dump, and we're going to paste that method, the function process payment, and it will take 2 arguments. The first one is the type of customer, right? Whether it's basic or premium. So let's give the basic one, first customer. And then the second argument is the amount it's paying. Okay, so let's say 100. Let's save and let's refresh the page. Okay, must be an instance of payer. Make sure you have saved all your files. Okay, payer, customer, make sure all saved. I didn't save, so I saw the error, but now it's working fine. So make sure you are using the payer as well on top in init.php. Now this function process payment, it takes the payer and process the amount, okay, and then it returns. So when we give the first customer, basic customer, it will say you are lucky one. Change this return type, it doesn't make sense. So what we can do is we just return the function. Okay, so what the function says, whatever the function says, is extent of taxes for the basic, and the premium don't have to worry about it. So let's use these methods. Okay, copy. Now init.php, if payer is extent of taxes, return payer is extent of taxes. Okay, so which payer is passed down here? If it is the basic, if basic is passed down, the first customer is the basic one, new basic, right? So if basic is passed down, it will know that basic has been passed here, so it will return the is extent of taxes, whatever is returned for basic. So for basic, that would be this, you gotta pay. Now, and if we pass the premium, the one it got is the premium one, and it would return the premium class is extent of taxes, and that ones would have this message. Okay, so let's give it a try. Now we used on the basic one, right? We used on the basic one, and we just modified the function to return exactly what it says. Okay, so let's give it a try. You gotta pay tax, mate. Basic customer, you gotta pay. Now let's try this on premium. Okay, let's copy, paste. First customer, let's change it to premium customer. Premium customer. Okay, save, and let's give it a try and say don't worry about paying tax. Okay, so that's the difference between basic and premium, but we didn't have to worry about specifying all that on this function. We just type in the interface and everything worked seamlessly. Okay, so this is the beauty of object-oriented programming. Work with the different classes that implement the same interface. This is it for polymorphism. Now in the next video, we're going to learn about traits. So traits are almost similar to classes, but they're a bit different, and they're easy to reuse. Okay, so we'll see that in action in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video, let's learn about threads. So threads are the mechanism that allows you to reuse code. Okay, so basically it's like instead of copy pasting, you just you include the code from different file to your class whenever you need. Okay, so let's see this in action, then it makes perfect sense. So when I think about threads in our application, where we could implement this one is if you go to person.php, as you can see, we have this kind of a ID system, right? So it will check if the ID is supplied or not. If it is no, it will auto increment the last ID, otherwise it will set the ID and all this stuff. Okay, so this is a perfect example that we could extract to threads. Okay, so and make it kind of a separate ID system, so that not only here, maybe we could use this thread in other classes as well as our application grow. Okay, so let's try this one. Let's extract this code to a separate thread, and let's use that thread here, and you'll see how it works. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder, and inside that folder I'm going to create a thread. Okay, so inside domain, let's create one folder, and let's call it utils, utilities. Okay. Utils, and here inside let's create this file. Let's name it unique.php. We want to have the unique ID system. Okay. Unique.php. Now this is the one that is going to be a thread. Okay, so first let's begin with namespace. Bookstore utils. Now thread, just like we would write class like so, because it's a thread, it's simple as that. Thread. Okay, so thread unique, this is the one we're going to create. Now what we want to do is we want to, so what we have here is we have this ID and the private static last ID. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this ID and the last ID both. Okay, let me comment it out before I delete. Let's just leave it here, and let's put them in thread here like so. Okay, so we just move the private static last ID and the private ID property from person to thread. Okay, now let's create a function set ID, and it will take the ID as the argument, which we want it to be integer type. Okay, now we check if the ID is empty. Okay, so if empty ID, what we will do is this ID, we will set that to increment the self last ID. Okay, this is same as we did earlier. In fact, we could even copy from here. Okay, so if that's the case, let's copy this block of code. All right, now because it is in a separate file, what we need to do is we need to provide two methods, kind of a getter and setter method. Setter will set the ID because we need to somehow get this argument, right? So how are we going to get it? So we're going to see that. So we need to create two methods. Okay, so one will be get last ID and another will be get ID. Okay, now let's go to person.php, and we have this accessor as well, get last ID. Let's copy this and then let's put it here. Okay, we don't have get ID, we can create one. Okay, and it will simply return this ID. Okay, so what we did here is we include all the code related to the IDs from person to this trait. Okay, and this includes the properties, these properties, it includes this method, and it also includes these getters and setters. We're doing this because traits cannot be instantiated. Okay, so traits, they cannot be instantiated, so we cannot add a constructor. Instead, we added this setID method that contains this code. Now when constructing a new instance that uses this trait, we can invoke this setID method to set the ID based on what the user sends as an argument. Okay, so let's go to class person, and what we're going to do here is we're going to use that trait. Okay, so the entire logic has been moved there for ID. So here I can remove all this code. Okay, let me just comment out for the moment. Now what I can do is I can simply use the trait. To use the trait, the first thing we need to do is we need to go on top and we use like so, just like we've been doing. Okay, utils unique. Okay, so now that we have used this use keyword to bring this in, what we can do is inside this class, okay, always inside this class, what you do is you want to use this trait inside this class, right? So what you do, use unique, simple as that. Okay, now this pattern you will see when you're working with Laravel framework as well, so it's very good to know about the traits and how to use all these. Now here what I can do is I can say this set ID. Now this set ID refers to the trait, okay, and then we pass the argument, the one that we get when we instantiate, we get this ID. Before we were processing this here, right? But now instead of processing here, we are giving it to the trait, so the trait can handle it. Okay, so we're giving this ID to the trait, to the trait's method setID, and we use this trait like so. Now when this trait gets this ID, it evaluates. If it is null, it will increment just like it was happening in the person class earlier. Otherwise it will set the ID and then it will update the self last ID as well. Okay, now we have this method as well, get ID, which will show us the ID. So let's give it a try. Let's try it in init.php. Okay, so back here what I'm going to do is I'm going to let me comment this out. So the first customer, let's get the get ID. Okay, okay, make sure you saved all your files first, and then okay, it's the unique.php. Okay, what happened is I put this folder inside domain. I supposed to put it on the same namespace as domain, not inside. So what I can do is let me move this folder out of this domain. Okay, first make sure you close all these files, okay, because we're going to move and later on it will be duplicated. So let's close this all. Okay, and now go to your folder directory and take this utils folder, drag it out. Okay, I want it to be on the same namespace, not inside the domain. Okay, now let's open this up, init.php, everything is fine. Let's give it a try, refresh. Okay, so we get this null. So the new basic with the ID of 1 is to null. It should increment to 2 by itself. Okay. Now let's try on this one as well. We'll fix that up. First customer, this one is premium customer. Okay, so the first customers get ID and then the premium customers get ID. So let's try. Refresh. Person set ID must be the type of integer null given. Alright, so we gave null because of this type hinting here. Let's get rid of it for the moment just for testing. Okay, let's refresh. Okay, so the integer is 2. Okay, let's try changing it to 10. Let's see what we get here. 10, refresh, it's 11. So we're seeing the second one, we're seeing the premium customers ID. Okay, so we're not getting the first customers get ID, we're getting null, but the second one is working fine too. Okay, so a couple of things I noticed here in our trait. Let's change this from private to protected. Okay, so here what I've noticed is I have this double equal. It should be the single equal. So we are assigning this ID to the ID that we get from the argument if there is any ID supplied. Okay, so instead of double quotes, it was double equals. By mistake I had. So make sure you make it single. So we are just assigning the value of the currently passed in ID to this ID. Okay, so let's give it a try. And as you can see, now it works. So the first customer, basic customer's ID is 1 and the premium's ID is 2. Even though it was sent as null, it works. Now if you give some other value, first customer, if you set it to 5, refresh, it becomes 5 and it increments to 6. Okay, so this is the basics of traits, how you can extract your code to a separate trait. We use this setter, set ID, and then we use that in our person.php class. We imported, we use the trait like so, and inside the class we have to define like so, use unique, and then we just refer to the method as if it was in this class, using this. Okay, so this is how we can use trait and how we can be more flexible when we importing the traits and using in our classes. So watch the next lesson and it will make it more sense. Okay, so I will see you in the next video where we're going to talk a bit more about traits. Okay, so I will see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this lesson let's learn a bit more about traits. Okay, so what happens if two traits contain the same method or contains method that is already in the class? So how do we deal with that situation? So let's see that in action. So what I'm going to do is inside utils, I'm going to create a new file called contract.php. Contract.php. Save, and then let's write a simple trait here. First we give the namespace bookstore utils, and then we create a trait contract. So it will have a function called sign. Okay, sign, it will simply echo signing the contract. Okay, just for testing, signing the contract. What we're trying to do is we have this sign method here. We will import this trait and try to use in a class, and then we will have another method also which also has the name of sign, and we will see how we deal with this one. Okay, now that we have this trait with this method sign, let's try to use this. So why don't we create a new one? Let's create a new one inside domain and let's call it manager.php. Okay, so let's give it a namespace bookstore domain. Okay, so in manager class we use the contract trade, right? So this trade has this sign method. Now let's try instantiating this manager class in init.php, and let's give it a try. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is first we need to import that class. We need to use, so let's copy paste and let's change it to manager. Now let's instantiate, let's call it manager equals to new manager, and let's try that, access that method manager sign. Okay, let's simply echo this out. Okay, as you can see, signing the contract. Okay, so this is another cool way of using trades. So you write a certain piece of code in the trade and you import that, and it can be reusable as well. Okay, so this sign method, this trade we used in manager. What happens if we imported another trade as well and that also had the same method such as sign? What happens in that case? Let's give it a try. Why don't we quickly create another trade? Okay, let's save this one as, let's save it as communicator .php. Okay, now let's go to contract and let's copy paste. It's going to be similar. Save. Let me reopen again. Okay, it's the same namespace trade. Let's change it to communicator. Now this will also have the sign method. Now it will say something, let's say from, just so that we can see the difference. Okay, so we have two trades, both of them have the same method, and we are importing them in this manager class. So let's see how it works. Okay, let's bring that in. Okay, use, let's copy this one, use bookstore contract communicator. Now we use this one as well. Okay, now both of them have the same sign method. Now we're trying to access the sign method here. Let's see what we get here. Refresh. Okay, the trade method sign has not been applied because there is a collision with other trade methods. Okay, so it's pretty useful error message here. So in a situation like that, how do you solve? Okay, it's pretty straightforward. What you can do, we have two options. One is using this instead of method. Okay, one is instead of keyword and another is as. Okay, so we're gonna use both of them. So what you can do is use communicator. First of all, we don't have to write it in two different lines. We can just simply comma separate. Okay, so what you can also do is contract comma communicator. Okay, we can do that too. So what we can do is we can use contract, so leave it as is. Now communicator, it also has the same sign method. So what we can do instead is we define like so. Within the curly braces we can say contract, and we access this method like so. We're using these two column. Okay, sign instead of, so this is the keyword we get to use, communicator. What we're saying here is use the contract sign method instead of communicator. Okay, so it's like reading plain English, pretty straightforward, and with semicolon. And also communicator sign method we can bring in as some other name. We can give some other name using this as. Okay, so communicator sign. So what we can do is communicator sign, we can say as, let's give it a name, make sign or anything you like. Okay, now this way we have access to both. We have access to the sign method from the contract, and we also have access to the sign method from communicator, but in this case we give that a different name so that it doesn't collide. Okay, let's give it a try. Refresh. Okay, sign in the contract, we get the sign, and this one is sign is being used on the of the contract. Okay, sign in the contract. Now we can also try manager sign. What did we name that? We named that make sign. Okay, make sign, save it, refresh. Okay, and this one is from the communicator. Okay, so this is how you can avoid the conflict. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Now what about you had another function within here as well? Sorry, not on this one, in manage class. What if you had another function like sign on here as well? Sign here within this class. So in this case what happens is it takes the precedence over all these other methods. Okay, so if it is defined here, it will be used. Okay, so we can say it is from the class. It will override the sign method that is from the thread. Okay, save it. Okay, so it's from the class itself, and then the second one is from this another thread. Okay, so that's how it works. So I'll see you in the next video where we're going to learn about exceptions. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video you're going to learn about exceptions. Okay, so constructors are great for verifying that supplied arguments are the right type, such as we have this constructor. We could specify we want this id to be integer type, we want this to be string type, and so on, right? So this is great, but what if they don't supply the integer and they supply some string or something? We have to throw an exception, right? That's we have to throw an error. So how do we do that? That's when this exception object comes in. Okay, so we can use that whenever there is an error. They need a way to complain if there's a problem, right? So this is where an exception comes in. An exception is a special object that can be used to indicate that something exceptional has happened. Okay, so let's see this in action. What we can do is we can go to this thread we created earlier for id unique. Okay, so if have one if statement, so we can say if id is smaller than 0, right? So they could be supplying the -1, which would make no sense, right? So what we could say is if id is smaller than 1, in that case, because -1 still would be considered the integer. Okay, so if the id is smaller than 1, what we would like to do is we would like to throw new exception. Okay, and we could give some kind of message here: id cannot be negative number, or something like that. Okay, so this is a very simple use of exception. We can throw an exception using this throw keyword, and we created this new instance of exception, and then we pass in whatever we would like to say. Now in this case we just want to say the simple message. Now let's go to init.php and let's give it a try. So the new basic customer, first customer. Okay, let me get rid of it. So the first customer, let's comment all this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just var dump this first customer, which is the basic type. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give instead -1. Let's see what happens. Save, go refresh. Okay, so we get the error here. It doesn't find the exception. That's because we need to say use exception. Okay, so it comes with PHP, so all we have to do is the thread, this one, right? So what we can do is we can say use exception. So this is where we're using exception, right? We're throwing the exceptions. Save, refresh. Okay, so as you can see, the error says on caught exception id cannot be a negative number. Okay, so that's fine, but how do we deal with this? Because it doesn't really make much sense. So what we can do in this situation is we can use try catch block. Okay, so first we give a certain piece of code to try that out, and if something happens, then we will catch the exception. We throw the exception. If that is successful, that's fine. If not, it will throw an exception, and that exception we will catch, and we can echo it out as a message. Okay, so let's do that. So what we can do is inside this set id, the entire if statement, and this another if statement, and another up to here. So this is the end here. So all this code just copy, and then what you can do is you can create this try catch block. Okay, try, then catch. Okay, so here let's paste that in. So try all this. If something happened, throw the exception, and that one we will catch. If something like that happened, we catch here exception. We can say that exception, the type into the exception, and then we can echo out the exception, and we get to use this get message method. Okay, so this should be e. Okay, so this is how you can use try catch block. So try this code. If something happened, throw an exception, and that thrown exception you want to catch in this catch block, and you want to do whatever you want to do. In this case, we just want to echo out. Okay, let's give it a try. id cannot be a negative number. Okay, errors as well. Construct must be type of integer, null given, and all that stuff. Okay, so basically this is what we're interested in. We get that. Now there's one more to that. Try catch, and there is another one called finally. So let's see that as well. So after catch, you can, this is optional. Okay, you don't have to use it, but you can if you want. So finally in this block, what we can do is we can, let's echo something out. Done with try and catch. Okay, let's save, give it a refresh, and as you can see, id cannot be negative num, done with try and catch. So this can be a kind of a default output. Okay, so it's completely optional, just so you know that you have this finally block available as well. Okay, so this is how you can catch the exception. Okay, so finally we have come to the very last video of object-oriented programming. So you learned quite a lot in this series. Okay, now with all this knowledge, you will have absolutely very easy time learning Laravel. Everything will be fun, because if you had no idea of OOP, and you had, even though if you had good understanding of PHP, and if you would go to learn framework like Laravel, you would be completely lost. Okay, so all these classes, extents, interface, static, all these different ways of accessing the properties, methods, all this stuff, it would be extremely difficult for you to understand. But now that you have gone through all this, it will be a piece of cake, trust me. So your next step should be learning a framework like Laravel. All right, so I wish you all the best. Once you start working with Laravel, you will never look back. Okay, it is extremely powerful, extremely developer friendly. Routing, authentication, everything is packed into this amazing framework. Okay, the Blade templating engine, talking to database using the eloquent ORM. So I wish you all the best. Go ahead and start digging Laravel PHP framework, because you have got the solid understanding of object-oriented programming. All right, thank you very much for being with me. Thanks for learning with me, and I will see you in the Laravel side. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to this amazing course. My name is Ryan Dungel. I love working with Laravel, and very soon you will too. Without further ado, let me show you what we will be building in this course. I will show you how to create multi-user authentication system. There will be administrators, authors, and subscribers with different level of authority. There will be a dashboard for all the users as well as public profile page. I will show you how to create search engine optimized blogs with complete control over meta title, meta description, all generated dynamically for each blog post. Search blog posts feature, featured image and photo upload, dynamic navigation menu, login and registration system, mass email feature, contact forms, login with Facebook, push it to the live server on shared hosting, and more. All while you learn the fundamentals of Laravel, the most popular PHP framework out there. Coding your dream application is within your reach. If you know the basics of PHP, you can take this course and transform yourself to a highly skilled Laravel developer. Learn to create actual web applications in Laravel in very short time. Enroll in this course and take your skills to a new height. Don't worry about the problems you might encounter along the way. There is a dedicated Facebook group and forum set up to help you all 24/7. Take this course and become a professional Laravel developer. You can start your awesome journey right now. Thank you.